I've learned that unless you speak aggressively and boldly, your views don't get heard. So I hope that by being incredibly strong and aggressive in my views, I'm rectifying a global imbalance in the debate between East and West.
Former Singapore diplomat Kishore Mahbubani has released his autobiography titled Living the Asian Century, an Undiplomatic Memoir. In it, he gives a gripping account of his difficult childhood and how his father was once jailed. He also recounts the ups and downs of his career in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and later as the first dean of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. I'm Sumiko, Executive Editor of the Straits Times. Mr. Mahbubani has chosen to have lunch at Tiong Bahru Bakery in Crane Road, opposite the house he grew up in. He tells me his mother taught him to be resilient and says he has been misunderstood by Singaporeans for being pro-China. Congratulations on your memoirs. You call it an undiplomatic memoir. Why is that?
Well, it's undiplomatic because it tells hard truths that sometimes don't come out in memoirs. So I try to be very open about how brutal great powers can be in the way they treat countries and walk over countries.
You were quite personal in some of your accounts. Was it painful reliving, like, say, your dad, what happened to him?
It's in some ways quite therapeutic also. My friend Jefferson recalls me coming to this coffee shop when my father was standing here with a broken beer bottle, a broken glass in his hand, after having fought with someone with blood on his clothes and everything. And there I was, must have been about 9-10 years old, trying to escort him back to our house, where the police had already arrived. So it's painful.
I mean, how much of your childhood, affected the way you approach your career and your life?
I didn't enjoy the adversity of my childhood. I clearly didn't enjoy seeing my mother suffer a lot. The uncertainty about when debt collectors came to our house, and posted notices to say that nothing in this house could be sold. I mean, you didn't appreciate all that. But there's no question that there's no way I could have become as strong as I have been or survive as much adversity as I have if I hadn't experienced, number one, the adversity of my childhood and also experienced the strength and resilience of my mother. There were many times when we didn't have enough money even for food. She always told us, never tell people about your suffering. You must always put on a brave face and put butter on your lips and smile, even while you're feeling very hungry. I did put butter on my lips quite often throughout my career, especially every time I experienced a downturn.
Would you say there were many downturns in your career?
Many downturns, which in some ways, as I try to explain in the book, were a blessing for me. Each time I went down, I would get depressed, but I could never break because my mother never broke. But I became stronger in the process of having to deal with each adversity.
What's the biggest misunderstanding about you?
I think the biggest misunderstanding is that, I do a lot of writing and speaking. I'm trying very hard to rebalance the global debate on the world, because we get lots of strong and loud Anglo-Saxon voices telling us this is how the world is, this is how the world should be. And even though the Anglo-Saxon population of the world is, let's say, 400 million people or whatever it is, there are 10 times that number in Asians. Now, if you look at the global debate, you never hear the Asian voices. And so you get a very distorted perspective of how the world thinks. And the reason why you don't hear Asian voices is because Asians culturally tend to be self-effacing and believe that it is polite to speak softly and not speak aggressively and boldly. But I've learned that unless you speak aggressively and boldly, your views don't get heard. So I hope that by being incredibly strong and aggressive in my views, I'm rectifying a global imbalance in the debate between East and West. But of course, to my Asian friends, I come across as being very cocky and self-confident and assertive. And they say, oh, this guy talks too much, But they don't realize that actually my main audience is to persuade the Anglo-Saxons that there's a different point of view. And paradoxically, the Anglo-Saxons appreciate the fact that there's a counter point of view because they like debates. They want to hear a different point of view. And so, on the one hand, I think I'm doing a service to my fellow Asians. On the other hand, I get, misunderstood and scolded.
There is a view that you're too pro-China.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
If I was pro-China, I wouldn't get endorsements from leading Western thinkers. When Larry Summers was asked by Bloomberg which were the 3 best books he read in 2020, he mentioned Barack Obama's memoirs, he mentioned Angus Deaton's book, Deaths of Despair, and he mentioned Kishore Mahbubani's book, Has China Won? And I wouldn't get invited to go and spend time at American universities to give distinguished lectures if I was pro-China.
But might any of these views be at odds with Singapore's more neutral stance?
It is not in Singapore's national interest to see the United States become more aggressive in trying to bring down China. Because if the US-China contest accelerates, and I fear it will be very disruptive for the world. And since Singapore is the most trade-dependent country in the world, the United States is endangering Singapore's national interests by creating disruptions. So what I'm doing is effectively defending Singapore's national interests.
When you hear someone say, describe you as telling the China story well, how do you feel?
I think they are right in the sense that the Chinese have not been good at explaining their point of view to the Americans. It's not surprising because most Chinese from China are not articulate in English. Most Chinese from China are also culturally self-effacing. So when I read what the West writes about China, I say, well, you misunderstand China. This is not what China is trying to do. There's a big difference between 2 words in the English language. One is aggressive and the other is assertive. Now, China has definitely become more assertive, no question whatsoever. All great powers become assertive, but China hasn't become aggressive. Now, China actually hasn't started a war in about 30 to 40 years, and that is often missed in the debate. So the people whom I'm debating are the people who misunderstand China in the West. But of course, in Singapore, since you don't see the other side, you see what you see, you think, oh, Kishore is being very pro-China. The 2 parts in the world that I travel to most frequently to give speeches on China are in the United States and Europe. So they are the ones who say, yes, let's listen to a different point of view.
If you could summarize your views on China and the US, what would that be?
Number one, it is a given that United States will try to stop China's rise, because all great powers stop the rise of competitors. Number 2, what the United States is doing is predictable and expected. It is not wise. And it would be wiser for the United States to acknowledge that there are now common global challenges in the world, like climate change, where United States would be better off working with China rather than trying to push down China. And thirdly, and this is where my American friends appreciate my writings a lot, I point out that the most pressing challenge that actually American society faces today is not external, it's internal.
Do you think you've exhausted everything on the US-China relationship?
No, absolutely not. Because the most dangerous years in the US-China relationship are not over. They're coming. So the next 10 years will be even more dangerous. So I expect that the demand for me to go and give speeches on US and China will grow over the next 10 years, because there are very few people who have sort of published books and published articles on the subject globally.
Thanks for having lunch.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The way I look at it is that because of the number of schools and the size we are, we're taken more seriously when we want to work with universities